Welcome to the Alma Flow podcast. My name is Paulia Eli. I'm a yoga teacher and a mentor in wellness and spirituality. Alma Flow, Alma means soul in Portuguese. It's a global movement where I bring together everything I study and live yoga, Kabbalah, Tantra, and also everything I learn from my students, my friends, and the people I meet along this path. So before we begin, I want to invite you to do something very special. I will be hosting a retreat in Brazil this July from the 23rd to the 28th in Paraty, Rio de Janeiro, at a beautiful eco village in the middle of the forest called Dharmashala. It's a Hare Krishna place. It's beautiful there. It's going to be a 6-day immersive experience where I bring together yoga, spirituality, nature, and culture. We will be connect with indigenous traditions, including the Pataxó community, explore the ocean, and also be there during Flip, that is an international literary festival when people from all over the world gather in Paraty. So the intention is really to merge art, culture, and spirituality into one experience. So the retreat is going to be bilingual, open to people from all over the world. If you feel called, just send me a message and I would love to have you there. So now let's begin. Today, I have the honor of having a conversation with someone I really, really admire, a brother of this path, on this path. We met during our yoga teacher training in Costa Rica through Ahana Yoga. And since then, I've always been very curious to understand more about how he lives and embodies this journey. Today I'm here with Travis Horn. Travis is a Miami based yoga teacher, breathwork practitioner, and humanitarian. His work lives at the intersection of spirituality, spiritual practice, and real world impact. He teaches Kundalini yoga, and his approach integrates breath, movement, and awareness to support the nervous system and a deeper connection. And before that, he spent over a decade as a documentary photojournalist, traveling to more than 70 countries working with humanitarian missions, which eventually led him to create a prosthetics initiative supporting underserved communities. And today, alongside his work in yoga and service, he also works in financial education, helping families create stability and protection. So, Travis, oh my God, so many things. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you. I know you have a very busy schedule, so thanks so much for being here.
No, it's an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's so nice to hear.
Right.
It's so nice to hear it back, on these paths in life when we say yes to things, but when it comes, encapsulated in just a few words, I sit back and I say, "Wow, that is remarkable. What a beautiful life that we live, that we've
Yeah.
shaped."
Yes, it's beautiful. And it's really funny because I had a background in journalism
Mhm.
and also photojournalism. I didn't travel photographing all these communities the way you did, but it's very interesting how it's very spiritual. It's a spiritual work too.
I agree. If actually this image behind me, this is an image that I took in Panama,
Oh,
and it's a very, very low tide. It was sunrise, and there's one guy there. And actually, this photo you can't see it, but it's larger than my arms. And I titled the photo "The Man and the Sea." And so, yes, it's been quite the journey. And as a photojournalist, I learned a very important principle, uh, and that's my when I as a freelance documentary photojournalist on assignments, oftentimes my job would be to capture the moments, and there would be all these elements swirling around, and I would kind of see it. And if I'm in a car, I'd have to say stop the car and jump out. And if I needed to interact with people in order to encapsulate that moment, uh, at first it would be awkward, but then it would be a matter of passion and purpose to involve myself speak to those people, put all of those elements that are swirling together so that I can capture the moment on film. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of a guiding principle for life as well. You know, there's all these elements that are swirling, and it's our job, it's our responsibility to put it all together so that we can live our highest life.
And it's beautiful what you say, because I the memory I have during our training there, that you carry a very calm, grounded, and respectful energy. And I remember this, I always, when I think of you, like this calm, even now when you start this podcast, we were talking before, I'm like, oh, I have all this energy. You're just like, just breathe.
Just
So I would love to understand your background, like where you're born, how was your connection to spirituality growing up? If you were always being this calm person, or something that you developed along the way, how was this?
wow. I was not always a calm person, and it's a daily practice, in fact, to remain calm. Um, just yesterday I was doing a breath work, and it was a two-part breath and then an exhale through the mouth, and it's something like this, like and I was participating. But for me, what happened was quite literally what it's intended for, which is I mean, really just, and I didn't even know how badly my nervous system needed just to release all of the things that I've been carrying from the weekend. I had a great weekend. And so to me, it was the reminder was that the path of returning to the nervous system regulation is constant and consistent. Things happen, and it's our responsibility to remain calm. And the way to do that in my practice has been through breath work. Um, and so this is something I had a spiritual awakening 3 years ago, and it's not anything profound. It was just a lot of things that were happening in my life, and I think there was a lot of chaos. If I looked at all my relationships, if I looked at my business ventures, if I looked at my home, it was all indicative of a person just in chaos, doing too many things at all at the same time, not doing anything with the right amount, the necessary amount of intention. And so I'm very, very grateful for that moment. And since then, I've been on this path to find stillness and alignment. And the things that aligned with me 3 years ago no longer align with me today. As we do in life, we grow, we change, we metamorphosize. And so for me, also a powerful part of my practice has been to also take inventory, to take a moment to breathe, to meditate and say, how are things going? The things that were important to me a year ago, a month ago, a week ago, how do those serve me now? What are my patterns? And once I can recognize my patterns and my blind spots, if they don't serve me, as long as I'm aware of them, I can let them go.
But how is that in your routine? Like 2 hours in the morning, you have time for yourself, for breathing. How does
Mhm.
that work?
I at some point I found out that having a morning routine is essential to having a successful day. And so through my Kundalini practice, we once maybe 2 or 3 times a year we'll engage in something very spiritual and very intentional called the 40-day Aquarian sadhana. And so it's a 40-day practice, typically at 4:30 a.m. And it's a 2.5 hour practice. And so we begin by tuning in, then we move through movements. A lot of the movement in Kundalini is about lubricating the spinal cord, so that we can clear the chakras and access the shunya. And then there's also a lot of chanting, and mantras and kirtan, as we do in ahana. And so that practice, the reason why we do it at 4:30 a.m. is because whether we know it or not, at about 5 or 6 a.m., our conscious mind, even if we're still asleep, starts to activate. And
Mm-hmm.
so we might be sleeping, but we might be like, okay, coffee, you know, eventually I need to open up my computer and check my emails. What were the things from yesterday that, and we're asleep, and then we wake up and we're like, oh, I gotta get up, I gotta get going.
I'm late.
So
It's like I
right,
gotta do this.
right. So by practicing at 4:30 a.m., we're still in that subconscious space, and there's a beautiful moment where the subconscious and the conscious can come together and communicate. And so
Mhm,
typically, if you've had maybe a powerful dream, we call those liminal moments where our subconscious is trying to speak to our conscience in that dream space. And
mhm,
so whenever I have a powerful dream, I also do my best to journal about it and decode the dream so that I
mhm,
can understand what my subconscious or perhaps my higher self is observing, is trying to communicate with the me that is driving my experience throughout the day.
mhm,
And so, to answer your question, Paola, I started a routine of any as soon as I wake up, and I don't wake up at 4:30 every morning. I wake up naturally, and I naturally wake up between, I would say, on average 5 and 6 a.m. The first thing that I do is open my window. I have the privilege of seeing palm trees from my bedroom. I will open the windows, and the first thing I will do is breathe and meditate.
mhm,
And so, and it's without much intention. I'll spend 10 minutes just listening. And typically in Kundalini, we call it Sat Nam, which is the truth of who we are,
mhm,
and Guru Dev, the teacher within. And
mhm,
typically those two voices, as long as I am still, will present themselves to me. And once I sense the presence of my highest self, I know to listen. And
mhm,
so the other parts of me, the father, the business professional, the yogi practitioner, the person trying to keep it all together. I'm
mhm.
just listening, and it informs me. It's been a beautiful way to start the day.
That's beautiful. And is there anybody in your family that follow not the same routine, of course, but kind of the same journey, spiritual journey? Do you feel like, because for example, my father, he was very mystical. He was very interested in things. Of course, when I was teenager or growing up, I didn't have the same interests. And then after 15 years, of my journey, I just see myself in kind of same process or similar experiences that my father had in the same age that I did, So how was that with you?
Wow. Great question. Thank you. My parents had a very significant influence on my life. My father is German, and he comes from quite literally nothing in war-torn Germany. He was born in 1940, so his first experience was living through, the reconstruction of Europe. And my mother, meanwhile, she was born in the Philippines and raised in the Philippines, and they didn't meet until they both met in New York City in the 1970s, I believe. So they both had very different experiences. My father from, very business minded, very practical, very true to the German nature. And my mother from the Philippines, they're a very warm, Southeast Asian island community. And they're famous for having this beautiful heart for family and for community. Um, and they came together, and both of them, I really, really, I'm so grateful to my parents. My father made sure that I knew my German culture. I would spend every summer with my grandparents along with my sister in a very small village in Germany. So I got to know the German language. My mother would also send me to the Philippines. I remember one summer I spent on the side of a volcano working at an orphanage and working on a farm,
Wow.
and so that's the kind of foundation that I had.
Mhm,
I wouldn't, and then I grew up in Chicago, which is the third largest city in the United States, right downtown, very noisy. And my parents were in the hotel industry. So fascinating life, surrounded by fascinating people. but
Mm.
very much like a business oriented. I would, for the sake of simplicity, I would call them a power couple. You know, they were very much on. You know, my father was
Mhm.
the vice president of a hotel management company. My mother was the marketing director of a hotel company, and so I learned how to speak and be charismatic. Perhaps that presents in myself now. However, a spiritual path, I wouldn't contribute my parents to having a spiritual path. It was more of a conservative, traditional upbringing.
Mhm.
The spiritual path came to me when I had a spiritual awakening 3 years ago.
Okay.
Uh, and then I found Kundalini yoga, and we call it the Kundalini awakening.
Yeah.
Something awakens within us, and then once we see it, once we have a taste of it, it's a lifelong pursuit.
Mhm.
Um, so I will be a lifelong student of yoga,
Mhm.
and I'm so grateful for it.
How's what is your Kundalini? What is Kundalini from your perspective? If you, because we understand now that it's there are so many kind of Kundalini. I don't know explanation. How is
Mhm.
your perspective? How do you understand this energy and this
Mhm.
process?
Yeah, something that I'm very much honor is the lineage. And Paola, you and I also had a teacher experience with Ahana Yoga, which is
Yeah,
steeped in lineage and history as well.
yeah.
Um, with Kundalini, the kriyas, which are the movements, or in the mudras, which are the how we hold our hands, and the mantras, which are the words that we sing in Gurumukhi, which is the Indian dialect.
Mhm.
These go back to 3,500 years ago. In other words, 1,500 years before Christ. And so we practice the same mantras, the movements. And for me, we're accessing an ancient technology. Something has been around, a part of humanity for so long.
Mhm.
And so it's almost unintellectual, is the one way to look at it, because it is so innately human. So, in my practice, when I begin to sing the mantras, yes, there are words behind it, but it's more the feeling, or the philosophy behind it. It's not necessarily the words. It's not necessarily for the mind to understand. I mean, for example, Om Namo Gurudev Namo. We're saying we bow to the larger creation of everything, and we also bow to the teacher within. And that's just something that we repeat and repeat and repeat. And then all of a sudden, we're there. We're present with that consciousness, that collective consciousness. Um, and so for me, when I say things like Kundalini awakening or activation, it's really tapping into not only my own highest self, um, where I can communicate and understand more about my purpose on this planet, for myself, for my family, but also as a leader in the community. But
Mhm.
it's also an opportunity to tap into the collective consciousness. Oftentimes in Kundalini, we'll sit down and we will pray for the world,
Mhm.
and I've it is effective, as a community. Then we go out and we radiate that love, that peace, that intention to everyone we meet, and so in that sense, we're part of the larger solution.
Mhm. I feel that all the chant, all the mantras, all this breath work that you do, it's a way that we, little by little, we expand our vessel
Hmm.
to really, in the right time, be willing to have this awakening. Right? It's not just like, okay, I'm starting one day, I'm chanting, I'm doing all the Kundalini yoga practice, and then okay, now I have this awakening. You prepare. There's the right moment, the right time for that. But I This is what I see when I used to be in many different communities here and groups that they study more tantra.
Hmm.
for yoga and tantra practices, but all this respect, the mantras, the importance to chant, and to understand, to purify. It's a purification of your thoughts. It's also right. It's so important, especially here in Brazil,
Mm.
to have this purity in your consciousness before you have this connection with real, this awakening. Do you understand
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Do you feel that there is the same process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first, I'm so grateful that you are leading a retreat around Rio de Janeiro. I love Brazil so much for its rawness. I lived for a period in Sao Paulo, but I was,
Mhm,
lucky to travel to many places during that time. And there's just such a rawness to Brazil, to the people, to the food, but then of course nature.
mhm,
What a great place to get in touch with Mother Nature and human nature as well. So I'm excited for you and your retreat, and for everyone who has the opportunity to go with it.
I wish you
Um,
could be here with us.
I
Okay.
wish, yes, as well. Yeah, yeah. I'll put it in the calendar for future events. Absolutely, I need to make space for that kind of thing. Yes, and so I think somebody said to me, Travis, if I decide today that I'm going to go to the gym and work out, I'm not going to walk out with big muscles and a six pack. However, 6 months from now, if I'm consistent, all of a sudden I'll look in the mirror. And it's that first day that I decided to make a physical transformation, that same person that's looking back at me, I had an idea of who that person might be. But now that I see this person with a better physique, bigger muscles and, feeling more comfortable in my body, it's not the beauty of the person in front of the mirror that I'm so proud of. I'm proud of the person who showed up every day and made a conscious decision to change. And that person looking that I'm seeing in the mirror is informing me in real time uh, what it is actually to be me.
Mhm,
And so, Paula, you were saying, we show up, we meditate, we purify our thoughts. That's absolutely correct. So I meditate to find stillness so that I can make decisions from a place of consciousness.
mhm,
And what's interesting is that I have an idea of what that means, of what I want, but it's as things happen, as life events happen, and as I'm confronted with adversity, when I find stillness, that place from which I need to make a decision, it's all of the experience that I've had since I've been on this spiritual path that are now telling me, hey, I know how to react to this situation. So
mhm.
yeah, very good point. Yeah, the purity of thoughts.
Talking about, speaking of body, as you said before, how important is the body in this process of awakening awareness for you, in your opinion? The way you
Uh,
eat, the way we work out, all the combo, the
of
combo.
course, yeah, of course. The cliche, of course, is my body is a temple. So in my spiritual path, I have just kind of organically stopped eating meat. Um, and it there's something about, at least in the United States, the agricultural business of producing beef and pork and these things. Um, there's in the United States we have something like 340 million people, and imagine how many chickens are required to feed that population. And then, like, once if you've seen images once or twice, or you understand the business behind harvesting meat, you kind of get an understanding for what I call karma. Unfortunately, animals will live a life of a lot of, like, fear and anxiety, and just it's not natural the way that we process food here in the United States. And so just very organically, I said, I don't want that in my body. I don't want to process that, you know? Um, and so having a clean diet, eating organically, avoiding things that we now know through modern science that are calcifying our insides. We say, there's certain things, elements that can calcify the pineal gland in the brain. And in Kundalini, the pineal gland is very important to activate in order to have these types of awakenings. So why would I put something that hinders that process? And so now that I know that it is my responsibility, to just eat cleanly, to have a physical practice daily, and it's having a good physique and a long life is almost a byproduct. But for me, the purpose, the intention, is to cleanse this bodily vessel so that I can achieve a higher consciousness.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's the same thing here in Brazil with all the products that we consume, not just food, but all the, toothpaste, all the other stuff that
Yeah.
really impacting our body.
Mhm.
Well, so I have just one more question for you. It's beautiful work that you do with all this, yoga, Kundalini, breath
Mhm.
work, everything that we already said here. But it's also beautiful, uh, the humanitarian work. Did I say
Mm.
correctly? We say
Yes.
it's humanitario, around the world. And I
Mhm.
think that this experience brings a lot of insights about what is
Mhm.
spiritual, the connection with the creator, with nature. It doesn't matter the condition you have all around the world. How was that experience for you? What
Mm.
experience, those experiences impact your view of life and spirituality
Mm.
in a way?
Very much. I mean, it's all tied together. So as a photojournalist, I decided to concentrate in medical missions, and so I would embed with groups like Doctors Without Borders type. So let's say it's a group of orthopedic surgeons from Canada. They would fly to a country like Haiti, and I've been to Haiti over 40 times. I stopped counting because from Miami, it's a 2.5 hour flight, and there's 4 or 5 flights a day. So I was able to go at a moment's notice. And so, with I would fly, for example, with a group of orthopedic surgeons to Haiti, and they would be doing life saving work. And occasionally we would do amputations.
Wow.
So whether it was a traumatic car accident or there's an underlying vascular disease. Oftentimes, diabetes, advanced diabetic patients will end up having an amputation because there's a lack of blood flow to the extremity, to the foot, to the lower leg. And, if a patient gets a cut, that cut will turn into a lesion. If it gets infected and it goes to the bone, the surgeon has to cut off the leg in order for the patient to survive. And it's for me as a photojournalist, what a privilege to go and document a medical intervention that is typically only available in a developing country, to bring that to a population that is underserved in those medical necessities. And then what I did as a journalist I would go to the patient's home after their hospitalization, and my objective was to meet the family. I wanted to see grandmother and the grandchildrens and the wife and the kid and the cousins and the nieces and nephews. And my question to them would always be, what does it mean to you that your father, your brother, your son received this medical intervention? And what I received was always just, this is why we do any of this, and sometimes it would be, oh my goodness, since my husband was able to go back to work, we were able to get our children back into school. And I said, wow, this is generational healing. However, in the case of an amputation, that the joy, there was something missing, because now let's just say the father had a traumatic surgery, and now they have to live life without a leg. And in developing countries, prosthetics is a total luxury. I mean, it's
Yeah.
no matter which way we look at it, it's thousands of US dollars. And so it's just not a possibility for the average, let's say, Haitian
Mhm.
person from Haiti. And so I determined, I said, this is an area where I could help. Again, as a photojournalist, oftentimes it's so ironic, but I'm the right person between a patient or a hospital or the funding or the foundation to make something happen. And
Mhm.
so I started with one patient. He was a pediatric patient, 8 years old. We got him an amputation. It took me over 12 months and $15,000 to come back 1 year later with a prosthetic leg for him.
Wow.
And so I said to myself, there has to be a better way. There are thousands of amputees in this country alone. How do we
Mhm.
scale this? And so I've been very, somehow it became my purpose, my agency. Uh, and Paola, I've seen it like almost 100 times by now. When an amputee takes that first step on a prosthetic leg, and as they rise to stand and they take that first step, without exaggeration, they're taking a step in a completely different destiny. They went
Mhm.
from being this handicapped person who needed help for anything, and their world would just get smaller and smaller. They'd go from the bed to the kitchen to the couch in front of the television, and they don't want to ask for help anymore. So they get depressed, you know, and they stop having purpose for life. But if we can get them a leg to stand on, then they can walk into the community, go to market, they can cook in the kitchen, perhaps they can go back to work.
They
They
put
can
the
find,
power back, right?
oh,
Like I got my power back. That's beautiful.
it's amazing. And there's a moment, we were talking about the spirituality of this. Uh, there's a moment in every amputee that I've served where I can see the hope return to their eyes. And our job is to give them the tools, in other words, the prosthetic leg. That person is going to walk into their own future and determine their own destiny. And so we call it legacy prosthetics because it's not my legacy, it's their legacy. What you do with the leg is up to you.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow, I got so emotional listening all
Oh,
this. It's a beautiful work that you do. Really, I'm a big fan of
oh,
yours.
thank you.
It's beautiful, and this combination, right? Because the spiritual awakening is so important. I understand that, but if you just get this and you stay inside of your bedroom or just
Mhm,
your close, community there, and there's so much to do in the world, in this world.
mhm,
You don't have to travel to Haiti or whatever. Sometimes in the community next to your house, especially in
mhm,
Brazil, there are so many communities. How can you take all this power, this spiritual power that you develop and just
mhm,
serve? I think
mhm,
it's just beautiful. This is what something that is really missing right now in the world,
mhm.
right? So it's
Yeah,
beautiful, it's very inspiring.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's yoga karma, Uh,
Karma.
yeah, service. I think one of the things that I respect most and I'm so grateful for that I receive from yoga is what we talk about, this awakening, this sense of self, this sense of inner peace. Thank God for inner peace. I mean, I led a very chaotic life and I still do, but now thanks to yoga, I know how to return to my inner peace.
Mhm.
And it's in being of service to others, whether I'm leading sadhana or teaching yoga or executing my medical mission.
Mhm.
It's, I mean, it's what a privilege to give back to a community and to a life that has given so much to me. And so for me, it's like that's the kind of, cyclical uh, pattern that I want to be on for the rest of life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful. What do you feel that people most misunderstand about spirituality today?
I think it's easy to look at what we do and just write us off as a bunch of weirdos. I remember Paola when we were in Costa Rica together, and we would have kirtan.
Yeah.
So here we are chanting, we're playing the harmonium, we're clapping, we're saying Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. If you look at it, you're like, there must be a cult happening next door, like that's weird. I'm staying way away from that, right? But what we're doing is we're repeating the words that have been said for thousands of years. And if you look around our circle of 40 people on our yoga teacher training, I mean, everyone is just the biggest smiles, and we're just radiating love from the inside out,
Mhm.
and what a joyous way to go about our day. And here's the most important part, Paola. When the kirtan ends and we're overflowing with love, uh, for me the most important part is the integration. So what are we going to do with that love? Are we just going to sit here in this cocoon, in this little bubble, and say I love you too? Or are we going to go out into the world and radiate that to our friends, to our family, to our community? We all have this ability to inspire, to just lead by example. So Paula, what you're doing now with this wonderful podcast and engaging community to share their experience, you're radiating love out into the world. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to join your mission. But what a beautiful thing. And this is how we win. It's somebody told me the definition of a miracle is when fear turns into love. And so doing things like this, we are being agents of love in a world that really needs it.
I'm speechless. I don't know even how to add all these things that you said. So beautiful. And thank you so much for your support. Really, really. Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we end? Tell me just and something that really is nourishing your soul right now, because we change,
Mm.
right? So right now,
Yeah.
what is really nourishing you?
Wow. So, Don, our teacher and the founder of Ahana Yoga here in Miami, came up to me last week, and she said, I was thinking to myself, I was thinking about you, Travis, and I said to myself, Travis should have a class. And it's so interesting how everything works. Before, I mean, you and I went to teacher training a year ago. There wasn't space in my life to teach at Ahana.
Mhm.
Um, but recently, there's been some changes, some significant, like great changes in my life that I've become aware of. And she said that to me, and my soul, just without me even saying anything, I just said yes.
Don, we love you so much. I wish I was in Miami right now with you guys.
Absolutely.
What have
So
you
it'll take several months to prepare because it,
is it going to be a Kundalini yoga practice?
I don't know. I'm gonna sit with Dawn and see, what combination. I very much respect what she's created at Ahana. She has a very specific lineage that she follows,
Yeah.
and she invites creativity. So whether it's breath work, maybe a combination of chanting mantra, but also Ahana yoga, we'll
Mm.
see. We'll see where this goes. But I guess the overarching theme that I felt, that yes that came from me, that just felt so good, it's alignment, you know and so part of the stillness, the meditation, the living life consciously is to find alignment. And I feel that the more that I align with the things that are meant for me, the more the things that are not meant for me step out of the way you know
Well, I would be here. I thought you 30
I
minutes
know.
or 40 minutes. I would be here just like 2 hours. There's so much to speak about, but I'm sure that we're gonna have another opportunity to talk more. So thank you so much for your time, for sharing your journey. I really appreciate your presence, your calm energy, and everything that you brought into this conversation. I hope you can really have more moments like this in the future. That's really good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paula. It's a privilege to join you on this. What a beautiful way to communicate to the world what's going on all around the world, and also to communicate with what you're doing. Thank you so much, Paula, for being such a leader as well in the yoga community, and leading a retreat. Wow. Congratulations. I'm envious of your participants, and I'm excited for the awakenings that you all will have on that journey.
Probably you're gonna be here anytime soon. We never
That's
know.
right. Yeah.
Thank you so much to everyone who is here listening or being part of this space. If this conversation resonates with you, don't forget to share, to comment, and send it to someone who might benefit from it. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.